All right, everyone. So thanks for joining us again for our weekly guest speaker series. Tonight, I am very, very honored to have two of my longest standing industry friends, vets, seasoned vets now, but I've known them since I moved to Vancouver. I think like Tara going back to 2001, I think was that first year. And that was the mainframe days. And again, I'm looking to Dave here. And Kathy, everything from THQ Relic to three-wave software and beyond. I've shared some bios out there, but I'm just going to put it out that I'm beyond honored to have you two here tonight. And but one of the things that I do want to do before we kick it off, and it's especially important today, is to do our land acknowledgement. It's been a part of our process, and we're going to continue to do this and do more with it. And you know, it's again, I don't want to take up space. We'll even show everyone the text on the screen. So it's we do want to acknowledge the Coast Salish peoples on whose territories we create, collaborate, and transform ourselves, and specifically the Tsleil-Waututh, the Musqueam, and the Squamish nations. Again, we're always looking to ways to not only remind ourselves of our position, but find ways that we can meaningfully build on collaborations. We've had collaborations with the First Nations Technology Council. I know Kathy, you've done some work with them as well. We've have grads who work in the First Nations Health Authority now. John Pantherbone just wrote a great piece for us on our site, and we're looking to make more inroads. But anyway, this is just a quick acknowledgement so everyone both here and seeing this on camera later know that it's on our mind, and we're going to do more to make good on in this space. Coming back to this space, so the Center for Digital Media, even though we're in the virtual land right now, we do have a physical location, and as part of that physical location, it's all about co-location, like-minded people, and building something better. And one of the things that, again, I'm going back in time here, but both Kathy and Tara have been a part of, when we had this early vision for a World Center for Digital Media and bringing industry and academia together and incubating really cool things, the Great Northern Way campus came into life and very quickly evolved over the years to not only become the home for our Master of Digital Media program, but also home to companies like Cinesite. So as Woot, right? So we have this great mix of industry and academia, living, playing, collaborating on site. We're going to continue in this trend. Not only that, I think, you know, our industry evolves as we age as well. I think it's changed. We've seen studios embrace better life practices, are always working to be more inclusive, which will be part of our conversation tonight. But anyway, this is to say that not only are they, we'll say, spiritually close to me, because and these are two of my longest standing industry friends and vets that have joined us tonight. They're physically close in the sense that, Tara, when we get back to campus life, you're right next door. And Kathy, you're welcome anytime as always. And anyway, that's my lead in here. But as part of that, I think what I'm going to do is going back to sort of my planned questions is if you could each tell us a little bit about your background, I guess, what got you into this space of digital media and to where you are today. And it could, again, knowing our audience is university master's students that are about to take that step, just put yourself back into their shoes, think of where you were at and how you got to where you are today. And first to go is Tara.
All right, thank you. So I'm Tara Kemes, and my pronouns are she and her. And before I talk about how I got to this point in my career, I do want to say that I am joining from right next door to that building, Dennis. I am working in the studio. I have pretty much been working in the studio this whole time with a small group. And that's also on the stolen shared lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. I'm on an active and very bumpy journey of unlearning and decolonizing and striving to be in more respectful relations with both the people and the land on whose we live and work. So I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for doing this. And I have what I call an accidental career path, because I started at a time before there were really a ton of educational programs in this world of animation and visual effects and games. And it all started by accident. I had a chance to have a summer job as a runner at Mainframe Entertainment. I was supposed to be there for 8 weeks.
Can I jump in for 1 second? Because this is a thing that's bugging me, not bugging me, but interesting to me. Did you studied at UBC, right? And you did was it your undergrad in Asian studies and
Asian studies and Japanese.
Japanese, because that connects so well into this career path. Anyway, back to you.
Yeah, well, you know, it's all kind of come together in some ways. But while I was there in those 8 weeks, an opportunity came up. The head of HR said, have you ever thought about human resources? And I said, I don't know what that is. And I was going on vacation for a week and I came back and she literally moved my desk and I was in HR, and that was that. So I was in HR for a bit, and then I started doing recruitment and then talent and culture, and then more general operations, which is what I do today. And I've been doing that for the last 3 years. How I got here though is that I was willing to try new things. When opportunities came up, I said yes, and I jumped in to help. I was proactive and I demonstrated a real appetite for learning. But let's be real, also, I am a white person who has benefited from a lot of systemic privilege. And that's why I'm here.
All right, well, here you are. Kathy, over to you. You're here on my screen, but you might be somewhere else on somebody else's. But Kathy.
I don't know where I am half the time. I'm just checking.
Who knows where any of us are?
I know, this is the thing, COVID. My name is Kathy Gibson. My pronouns are she, her. I also am, feeling extremely similar to Tara's, comments. I'm very much on a learning journey, and there's just so much constant uncovering that I feel personally that I'm doing within my journey around diversity, equity, inclusion work, and what has been recently uncovered, and I also want to definitely be really cognizant and mindful that we're so blessed to be on the unceded territories of the Coast Salish and Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh nations also. So I rolled into I've been an independent consultant since 2008, and I do a variety of consulting work. I work as an HR consultant with Clay Entertainment, for example, and I have a long video games, digital entertainment sort of background, having worked at Relic, as did Tara, who is such a, both Dennis, I'm so thrilled and happy to see you, and Tara has been on the governance committee of a diversity, equity, inclusion province-wide project, and her insights have been just tremendous. My background's really kind of very sloppy how I ended up in video games. I did a psych degree, and then I then I was a graduate placement sort of rep at a private institution and doing coaching around life skills and stuff, and then some other tech stuff. And then I sort of answered a Georgia Strait job posting when there was a newspaper and you opened it and there was a job posting for Relic Entertainment, and I was like, oh, video games, that seems cool. And I literally that's how I literally got my job, which was that's a whole other story, but very much just sort of thrown into the deep end and found my way, and having had a psych degree and no industry knowledge at all, and just being very flexible and trying to navigate my way and figure out and learn as I went. And so I right now my big project is I'm the senior project manager and consultant for the HR Tech Group's diversity and inclusion in tech project, and I do a variety of diversity and equity consulting and policy work and labor market research, and I dabble in everything from immigration policy to education and a whole slew of different fun things. So
that's awesome. No, and thank you both for all the advocacy and work you've done getting BC and our digital economy to where it is today. The PNP expansion becoming a permanent thing, amazing. That's incredible to have now, and I know that's from efforts that are coming from great people like yourselves. So again, appreciated, and I think there's obviously more for us to do as we evolve within this industry. But what I really like about both of your personal experiences too is that you've been there, done that. You took some opportunities to get to where you're at today. And tonight, we've got a group. A lot of our students are international that are making Vancouver their home. I mean, the one unique thing with our program is they'll graduate with a visa in hand. So I know VFS has had some challenges, of which you both taught at in the past as well. So give them the nod. We've had some great VFS grads come through our doors as well. But our students have visas in hand. They're ready to work. But tonight, I think, yeah, as part of that, I'm going to ask some questions as to what advice do you have as far as starting their careers for these soon-to-be grads? Like, what steps should they be taking right now to get on the radar of those companies that are looking for talent? I've heard BC has some very increased demands for talent. So what's the thoughts? Kathy, your screen is lit up. Go to you first.
Oh, yeah, no, thanks. I think that, I mean, when you're getting started, really, I think the opportunity is just to network absolutely everywhere and anywhere that you can, really expanding your connections, having conversation, doing sort of going out for a coffee and trying to understand people's roles, their perspectives, their job functions, the type of jobs that you're interested in. I think really it's about being really agile and not necessarily stuck on a one path sort of journey around how you might evolve your career and your goals as you go. I would also say that it can be intimidating to get out there, and there's a lot of like imposter syndrome, and there's a lot of self-doubt that can happen, but you have to be really persistent, and I think you have to be really confident in what you have to offer and be able to articulate that really, really well into like a short amount of time that you might have with the right person who can make the right connection for you. Yeah, and just honestly being ready to learn and setting achievable goals and taking initiative is sort of my starting advice. But Tara, please.
Exactly. Over to you, Tara.
Yeah, well, I agree with everything that you said, Kathy. And while I'm in general operations now, I spent 14 years, I think, focused on recruitment. And I was talking to our talent manager today before doing this, just to go, like, what is the big thing now, just to make sure. And it's the same stuff. It's being authentic and don't be generic. Like, really, if you're going to have a conversation with someone, be there to actually learn from them. And if you actually get somebody's time, appreciate it. If you ask for feedback, appreciate it, and don't get too defensive and caught up in yourself, because we got to all be adaptable. Like, that's, I would say, the biggest competency that you can have in this industry, and probably so many, is being adaptable. Stuff is going to change so fast. Dennis, you said it. It is bonkers right now for talent. Like, this may be the most bonkers I have ever seen it. And that will be that way for a while. And then it's highly possible in 2 years, it's not going to be the same. So we all just have to keep adjusting as things go. I think be realistic about your skill level and your proficiency level. I think this is very, very important. It's okay to be starting out in your career and not have a lot of experience that you can really draw upon that's technical or directly related to the job, but just be realistic about that and apply for the jobs that are suitable to where you're at. That doesn't mean that you don't aspire into jobs that are maybe reaching, but it's just still being realistic and thoughtful about how you approach that.
Nice. No, thanks for that. So, I mean, as they're thinking about putting their portfolios together or resumes, I mean, this is very helpful advice, and being descriptive, I guess, as to the roles you could see them fitting in, but not right out of the gate art director, creative director, unless they're coming from there.
Exactly.
I will say, we've had senior folks like ourselves do this master's degree, so it's
Totally.
it's a mixed bag of talent. But leading into this too, and back to the networking side, do you have associations, specific events, meetups that, again, we speak to that a lot of our students are visiting, or still international, but they can participate online if there's like online conferences, meetups. What associations or meetups do you think they should network within?
Yeah, I mean, some initial thoughts. I think this is where your associations, like, so the way that it kind of works in the province of BC is that there's sort of regional associations, and then there's also subsectors of technology associations and membership-based organizations. So if you are thinking about kind of aligning it into something closer to life sciences within, a product that you might be thinking about developing, for example, or where your interests lie, in terms of, being a project manager or what have you. It's like, how do you figure out where your interests lie, what the roles are that you're interested in, and then get in front of those people. So it's kind of like reverse engineering. So some things that come to mind, certainly, like there's DigiBC, or there's Creative BC, or they're like, depending on, if you're in more the creative realm, the Canadian Media Producers Association. So for example, and Tara can certainly speak more to those sort of organizations. And there's so many like amazing, I think, networking opportunities that are out there. But there's also, so I would say, like Society for Canadian Women in Science and Technology. So SWIS is a good one. Vancouver Enterprise Forum could be quite interesting for some of you. Young Women in Business. There's just like, there's also a whole bunch of different tech meetups like across the city that could be, depending on the discipline and the angle that you're kind of forging, it could be of interest as well.
Thanks. Tara, any come to mind?
I would say I'm thinking less about the actual organizations, though there are a couple I can think of, and more thinking about networking too. And just, I know LinkedIn's old now, and yet it's still a huge go-to for people. So get yourself found. Think about like optimizing your own search words within your presence on LinkedIn. I still really encourage people to reach out and make connections, but personalize them, customize them. Don't use the generic message that goes out on LinkedIn, because that's not going to get you the kind of notice that you want. And just be thoughtful about it, but get yourself out there. I think another way you could approach this is think about the things that you like to do in your, I'm going to air quote this, free time, but the things that bring you joy, but maybe be related to why you have a passion for this work. And look into some of those organizations and those meetup groups, because you might meet like-minded people there who are working in the industry, and you're going to find some relationships that you might be able to, for lack of a better word, capitalize upon. But then there's like Spark. I think we should mention that. And there's a new group called Collective Bunch. This is a new group that is focused on creating a talent space for people of color, Black, Indigenous, and people of color locally here. And it is just getting started, but if you fit into the Collective Bunch, then maybe it's something you want to check out.
That's awesome, and very, I mean, it's topical too, because we're doing a project right now for the BIPOC community. It's one of our industry projects, and we definitely have a history of, yeah, there's Rachel giving a thumbs up. She's supervising that project actually, so it's kind of cool. And yeah, we also, next week, our guest speaker is Vanessa from the Women in Animation group, which we've had, actually there's the international, this is in Annecy, France. Just posting the link there for everyone so you have see that's coming up next week, I think. But anyway, yeah, no, that's really cool. Actually, on that note, I wanted to ask you, Tara, about community. Like, so I know that I think you're part of founding that group, and it's a queer friendly, like, is it a
yeah,
physical?
it's well, I was on the board for 3 years, and it's BC's Queer, Trans, and Two-Spirit Resource Center, and they have been operating in BC for many years. In fact, they've been working out of a small location just off Davie for a long time, and will be going into a new space at the corner of Burrard and Davie when it's built. But they offer a ton of resources and supports to the queer, trans, and two-spirit communities. And I'd love for us to try and find a way as an industry to engage with them more, to create more opportunities, because what we see is a real the biggest gap in why we do not see as much diversity and talent here is that access to the required education now. Most of the programs are very expensive, and a lot of people who come from underrepresented and generally excluded groups don't have access to the programs. So if there's a way as an industry we can do better at facilitating that access, it's going to be better for all of us.
That's awesome. No, and I applaud you for that too. And it's, I think we're going to be, you know, we're super proud to be supporters in this space, and if there's meetups or other things that we can do on site to continue to support and endorse and do what we can. I mean, I was super proud today, and this is just a sidebar, but I was I'm never on WhatsApp. I have too many social channels, but I went on because I wanted to let the students know about the talk. And then they had posted our pride flags went up the other day, and a bunch of students were just over the moon about it. And I'm like, it's a flag on a building, and but it's like the representation, I guess, matters in that sense too, or the inclusive nature, and just trying to, we have a scholarship that we got throughout TV, and we want to do more. I think this is aligned with some of our interest around the Indigenous interest too. Like, we want to be mindful of the underrepresented groups and the things that we can do to make a more inclusive world. And I think the kind of people that we're looking to build are those that are accepting and also aware and can address some of these challenges. And I think, again, why I really love having both of you on the call tonight too, is that you've been working towards that end, and there's still so much work to be done, for sure. Like, there's no, getting around that. But I think what I'm seeing in these students is that they want to be difference makers too. And on that note, like, I'm trying to figure out, when we talk about students, putting their resumes together, their portfolios, and how do you like to see if they're volunteering at specific spaces? Like, what do you like to see in the candidate beyond just the, I'm a programmer, here's my code? Like, how do you get to the root of the person, I guess, or like, what would you like to see in those that are approaching you?
Yeah, I mean, for myself, I want to have like real authentic conversations with people. And I think that there's a sense of, trying to get to know someone in an interview process is a thing. And people, there's a lot of bias when you're being interviewed that we all have to be aware of in terms of affinity bias. And like, there is this natural tendency that we, tend to like and categorize in our minds people that are similar to ourselves, right? So I think there's some, advantages around the way that our brain operates and thinks about some of those things in terms of like the quickness of getting things done and what have you. But I mean, there's all sorts of like inherent risks around like these various biases that we have. And I think that, I really liked what Tara mentioned about like tapping into some of your true passions and also understanding, and then like that can lead, it's sort of like the breadcrumbs, and you never know where the conversations and where those different relationships might lend themselves in various connections. I know for myself, anytime I saw volunteer work on a resume when I was actively recruiting was a huge, like, I want to know more about that. I want to know what this person's passionate about, how they're spending their time, how are they, genuinely good human, like a good human that wants to also give back. I think there's something beautiful about that, right? And being able to share your time is a big thing. I will do a baby plug that one of the on the HR tech group, and I'll make sure Dennis that you have like all the information about this around the hub and the various resources, or when we chat on diversity and inclusion in a bit. But I also want to just share that there is, we're in the process of building an advisory around that hub and getting volunteers to help review content and all sorts of things. And I think, that's a wonderful way to be with like-minded individuals who are trying to, help make the world a better place and build equality. And there's some that's one opportunity that I'll share out with you, that in case any of your students are interested.
Yeah, no, and thank you for that. And again, it kind of leads to, there's the volunteering opportunities, but there's that upskilling or micro-credentialing or learning, so I know that if there's, you were part of an EDI workshop that one of my colleagues, Chris Hindle, I think signed up for. So I'm just kind of like putting it out there, but I think a well-rounded individual is beyond just the work, right? So being able to showcase that is kind of important.
Yeah, like your sports, your like whatever it is that you're passionate about, it's, I have seen random things where it's like, oh, I collect whatever it is, with something super random. It just so happened that, someone else did that too. And then it sparks an interesting conversation. So you just never know where things can go.
Which is nice to hear. Cause I mean, we've kind of went through this, don't include your hobbies, or don't, show your, you gotta be, anyway, it's nice to see that.
It's like the balance, right? Yeah.
I think that's representative of the shift too, like demographically, workforce wise, as an employer, we know that what's driving talent now is different than 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever the case may be. And way to go, the Quidditch team, that's awesome. That's fantastic. But it's like, we know that you care. So if you're going to join an organization, it's because you want to feel in an alignment. It's not, for most people now, I wouldn't say all, but for a lot of people, it's about more than the paycheck. It's about more than what they're doing on their computers all day. It's the connection that they feel. So as an employer, it's up to us to try and create that connection as well. It definitely goes both ways. Coming back to resumes, like resumes are still really vital. I remember there was a period of time in the mid 2000s where this video resume became a very quick thing, and then it died, and everybody went back to paper or digital paper versions of it. So what we really want to see is something just organized and clean. We look at this as a recruiter, you look for maybe 6 seconds at a first glance. And we need to get some basic information. So put it together in a way that we can quickly assess, put it together in a way that a crawling program can go through and find the necessary info. Just be thoughtful that way. Make it easy for the recruiter to like the skills that you're bringing to the table. And as far as portfolios and stuff go, I would say show that you know where you're applying. Like if you're applying to an animation company, don't hit us with a bunch of VFX stuff. And if you put in a cover letter or some opening message, make sure you've done your research. And if you're customizing things, check it and get it right for who you're writing to, because stuff like that matters. Language matters. And by that, I don't mean English language and your skills in English, but I mean your thoughtfulness and how you present and represent information. So those are just some more practical things I'd put out there.
Yeah, I think I can't imagine how many times, like, and Tara and I have chatted on this over the years, but you know, how many times I'll be sitting at my desk at Relic and I'll be getting a resume and a customized cover letter, and they like forgot to change the name of the studio from Radical at the time to Relic, or like, right?
Always Radical. It was
always Relic and Radical.
Because Dave was there. People wanted to work with Dave.
I know.
It was so like all the time, right? And you're just like, oh, but like your attention to detail, it does speak to like part of your job function is going to be attention to detail. It is actually a thing, right? So you really want to put your best foot forward and make sure that it's super, super accurate and on message and clear and to the point. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that, because it's true, and it's, you know, we've seen a number of students, and I always speak to this, that they spend so much time through their academic careers on projects to get, you know, to try to get that A, and they'll spend hundreds of hours on a course, and then it gets to the resume or the online portfolio, and sometimes it's left lacking, or it's like a UI UX designer that's like dropped all these things that, you know, formatting's off. I'm like, no, what are you doing to yourself here? It hurts me sometimes, but it's the, you know, I don't know if that's a human thing, and it's just that if I don't do perfect, then I have a reason, or, you know, there's got to be something to this. It's just, but yeah, those mistakes happen far too often. We're trying to shake it out of them. Dave's doing that. Dave is our intern. Yeah, there you go. The powers that be. He's going to be on top of that.
You know, that's funny though. I think, considering we're here talking about equity, diversity, and inclusion topics too, part of colonialism is a desire for perfection, and not really being open to something that's less than perfect. That feels like failure. So if we're really committed to decolonizing, then I'm way less concerned about like a typo or an error. It's more the thought process and the care, and the severe attention to detail is maybe not such a big deal. It depends on your job that you're applying for and how we're relating these two things, right? But I think that's important to note. I also wanted to say, like, there's this thing from a recruiting standpoint. If we see the same candidate apply for 8 different jobs at our organization, your application is generally going nowhere, because we need to know that you know what you're good at. And if you're just spamming in applications, I worked somewhere for a while where, I am not kidding, a candidate applied for every single job that was posted. And this was from the runner to the supervising lighter to the accountant. And he did this for like a year. So just be thoughtful about that. Show us you know show us that you know what you're good at.
That is great. And again, it's you're right. I mean, it's typos can be forgiving. And if it's especially, I think we're trying to make people, realize that we're human, right? And I think, mental health is another thing that, we're looking at and being more open about and accepting with. And I'm now thinking, out of this pandemic, I mean, the realization that I think there used to be this mindset of that, wear the hero badge. You only, if your arms, still attached, you can come into work. But if you're like deathly ill, anyway, I'm seeing a shift, and I'm curious, and I wanted to get both of your opinions on what do you see about the future of work? And then specifically, if there's anything this pandemic made you realize or think might change. Either want to go first on this one?
Yeah, I mean, Tara, do you want to start, or?
Sure, I can start. Well, let's talk about logistics first. I have a hard time imagining that we will go back to things exactly how they were. We have lots of conversations with colleagues in different organizations about this. I also have a hard time imagining that we will, in our particular industry, ever go to a fully work from home environment. And I kind of hope, and I really hope we don't, because so much has been lost for communication, collaboration, and connectivity. And some of this stuff doesn't show up right away, but it shows up months into a project, and it shows up when things get really challenging. When you can't look around and see that you're all in it together, things are much harder. So I think we're going to see some hybrid version of working from home, working in the studio, maybe a handful of people who are doing fully each, which is exciting. Like, this is a real push for us for years and years and years, and Dave's nodding along. Technology and security always said, there's no way we can do this. People have to work in the studio. And well, guess what? That's not true. So I'm excited about that. And I had written down a couple of things that I hope continue post-pandemic.
Yeah.
I hope that the handshake stays gone forever. I do not see why we need to have this bizarre Western notion of handshaking. So I'm all for just a hi or a verbal hello or a nod, whatever it is. So I hope that stays away. And the other thing I hope, which is what you were saying, Dennis, is that we continue to strive to create environments that are more safe and open to talk about mental health challenges, and to be realistic that we are humans. And some of the stuff we most have in common are the challenges that we face.
On that note, I'm going to just pick up a personal one because I have the chance. Birthday cakes, no more blowing out of candles, ever. I've said this pre-pandemic. I've had my own personalized cupcakes. Teresa, I know she knows that. Yeah, there you go. That's right. Because, yeah, this has been anyway, death to birthday candle blowout culture. That's my piece. Anyway, Kathy, to you.
Yeah, I loved everything that Tara hit there. I agree. I think that things as we know them will never be exactly the same for certain. And I think that the awareness from an employer's perspective and the necessity for them to be interested and engaged with their staff, particularly with the work from home culture and like with what's happened, has become more essential to make sure that people are okay. Because, if you have a weird interaction with someone, you can't just like look over at the side of your desk and make sure everyone's doing okay and that, things are back on track, right? Like there's a lot of conversation happening across the industry right now, just in terms of what's going to happen from a retention perspective, what is sort of the investment I think that employers need to be making around mental health is really, really important, and making sure that people feel supported and that they have access to services and counseling and all sorts of pieces. I think has a light's been really shone on this as a massive issue, and it goes further than, like, when we talk about people with disabilities, it's there's sort of apparent disabilities and often invisible. You may not know that someone has mental health challenges, and if anyone was somewhat predisposed already, it's been extremely vulnerable time for people. And just the lack of connection and the isolation has I think been really tragic for a lot of individuals who have been working from home. So, you know, I do think that I've heard of various different models, you know, in terms of approaching returning to work, and, you know, oh, maybe we're going to do 3 days a week, and then, you know, the other 2 will be flex, or like lots of different models and approaches. And I do think that the ability to hire internationally has also sort of the piqued interest around just being able to like hire someone from anywhere, because you're not meeting in person anyways. And then what that's doing to the market has been a little bit insane, I think, as well. So I think there's a real necessity and for employers to be spending more time and resources around understanding how to best support their people, and that's been something that I think a lot of employers have been responding to.
No, it's interesting, and it does make me think back to the game studios core hours concept in the past. Like
10 to 4, 10 to 3, yeah.
There you go, right? So it's some days. Anyway, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, and that openness to a new model, and so I think there's some, you know, there's going to be some interesting changes down the road, and I hope we don't just completely return to normal. But I do believe that that human connection of the all hands looking around and seeing that you're all in it together, those are all important points. And, you know, we're all sort of itching to get back together to just acknowledge our existence with other people. I've barely left this room. I'm like, my virtual background changes all the time because I just feel like I need to be traveling, but I'm not going anywhere. But anyway, this is, you know, and I guess I was going to say, so Tara, you're at the office, and I did earlier post a link for those on that are participating to check it out, because there's actually some images of your office space, which is awesome, and you can see our building out the window. So it was like, you know, there's a little added bonus. So for those that graduate that may want to join Cinesite, they don't have to go too far. And you already have you have some of our grads working with you already. So it's
it's awesome. Like, and just coming back to, I remember working when it was still Rainmaker, and this whole geographic area vision was being talked about, and looking at development plans for what it could look like. And now we're here. It's kind of wild to see it all happen. I want to talk a little bit about what you were saying, Kathy, too, you know, remote workforce and what that means. And because we know now that we can do it, which is fantastic, what we need now is employment legislation to catch up, because there's all sorts of barriers and hurdles that come down to governments and laws that take a long time typically to change, that make it tough for companies that, if you're only based in Canada, to start having a ton of remote employees and do it in a legally compliant way. We're not there yet as a country, but hopefully this will force a relook at some pretty archaic legislation. Some really good stuff in there, but some stuff that needs an overhaul.
Tax incentive and otherwise, and I always like one that was called Dave, because I have a Dave in my network. So did you want to make tax credit? Dave. Totally. Yeah, no, it's again, I think there's a lot of interesting challenges to tackle as we move forward, and I think like our site too, it's going to continue to evolve. I'm very impressed as far as it's come to date, and we're getting the transit extension through, and there's going to be some future developments, and myself and a number of colleagues had some discussions around that future, and it's but the future is bright. I think we're coming to a better place, and I think it's already started with bringing companies like Cinesite on site to go along with our MDM program, and we're going to keep attracting the talent that we can to BC to continue to come here and pursue their masters and likely other programs down the road, and hopefully become future employees at studios like Cinesite and the THQ relics of the world. And it's but yeah, with that, what I don't want to do is monopolize the time of the students or Dave for that matter. So I'm going to take a pause on my questions to our esteemed guest and see if there's anyone who would like to jump in with a question. And by default, I'm going to probably go to Dave first because he's on camera and I know he always has one. So, but if anyone else has a question, this is a huge opportunity to ask the vets. With that, Dave, you'll be first up. Anyone else, you can either go on camera, raise your hand, or type a question in the chat, and we'll go from there.
Okay, look, I'll start. Tara, Kathy, great to see you both. And thank you for doing this, by the way. Really appreciate it. Always giving back to the community and our students. I don't think you're used to me not speaking very much. So, and the reason why I actually wasn't going to say much at all was because the students get to hear me all the time. And I think it's really important to hear from you. And I want to go back to the connection part, because when it comes to resumes and portfolios, the students often hear a lot of very practical tips about what they should do with it, how they should focus it, how long someone spends time reading it, how it should be tailored for everything. But the connection part is still something I know that everybody struggles with, especially students that are coming from countries where normally you do not connect to find a job. You apply and there are many jobs. And it's a different process. Like, we talk about having common ground. Connect with someone that has common ground. You went to school with them. You know someone that works there, or that maybe they have a similar role. Your professor knows them, right? What other tips do you have, like really, really concrete ones for our students that are trying to make these connections right now?
With what you're talking about, Dave, I actually say the onus is more on the employers to do better, because those practices, which have been the same for so long, are innately exclusive. So I know a lot of employers are trying to do better and have their recruitment practices be looked at to remove as much as unconscious bias as we can. So I think we need to start there. But as for the students, I do think there are some skills that we can practice, and this is also to do with the fact that we communicate so much now with keys and typing and writing, and not our voices and not our faces. And it's a good skill to practice, because when you actually do get the job too, these are really important for creating that connection in the workplace. So I think what you want to do is look at some common practices, especially if you come from a different country. Look up what are the common business practices of the country you're applying to. I would say this goes in any direction, because you want to show that you understand how they operate over there. Now, that's going to help you get at least probably noticed a bit quicker. But then, like you said, it's up to the employer and the recruiters to take their blinders off and start looking at people holistically.
I would just 100% concur. I think that there's a really important sort of concept around cultural intelligence, around, you know, trying to gain understanding. And this is definitely, like, the employers need to up their ante around cultural intelligence and understanding, like, you know, that not everyone wants to shake hands, or that, you know, dogs in some workplaces are not, you know, welcomed, and that can be like a really big thing. And making sure that we're observing different, you know, holidays and you know, days of significance for people. You know, I work with a variety of not-for-profits, and when I was with the First Nations Tech Council, it's like, how do you build a policy around bereavement that's culturally appropriate to an Indigenous person when someone passes away? Like, it is a community event, and it's like, it's not like, oh, you've got 3 days, you know what I mean? So it's like, how do we build compassion around those points of connection? And I really do think that the employers have a lot of work to do, and I think there's some wonderful efforts underway, and I think that there's an interest right now that is wonderful, that there's a conscious awareness that's happening around trying to both be more inclusive from a representation perspective of individuals, you know, who are Indigenous, people of color, new immigrants to Canada, women, you know, LGBTQ to spirit individuals, plus we're just, there's and individuals with disabilities and neuro diversity, and looking at individuals with ADHD and people on the autism spectrum, and how do they work, and how do we, like, all of these sorts of things. So I think that there's from a cultural intelligence, and that might be just even a coined term, and I'm happy to share some resources with Dennis if it's of interest, like just in terms of webinars and things like that around that topic that might be of interest to some of the students. I'm happy to share some resources over after the chat too. And I'll share it really quickly. There's a talk coming up around the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Hub around the autism spectrum disorder, like autism people on the spectrum, and creating like geared for employers to be more inclusive and to consider like retention and the recruitment of people on the spectrum, and how to share that with their staff and what have you. So I wanted to share that opportunity too.
Oh, thank you. I have one quick follow-up because I'm still waiting for any more questions. Our students can be shy here, so I'm going to definitely kind of poke them to say, this is your chance now to make an introduction yourselves and to appear on camera.
Oh, Dave, that's a great little segue for if you get an interview opportunity. I don't care what stage of your career you are at. If you are in an interview and the recruiter or the person asking the questions says, do you have questions for us, or what questions do you have? If you don't have a question, it's bad news. It's bad news. It's probably the number one thing that most recruiters can agree upon that just makes them go, well, I guess they're not that interested. So that was a good segue. Thanks, Dave.
Oh, that was good. And also to make that question, Tom's got a question. Forget it, Tom, you go ahead. Go ahead, Tom.
Thanks, Kathy and Tara. This has been great. Really, really good information that's coming out today. I was just kind of curious, as we're all looking for jobs too, and Kathy in particular, when you win awards such as Best Employer, what are these things that companies are trying to do to bring in good talent and foster those healthy environments in the work situation, especially when you achieve awards like Best Employer?
Well, I will say that it was some time ago, but I thanks for that. I think there's a whole variety of different policies and initiatives that employers can undertake to try to really be genuinely interested in their people and the development of their people and the engagement of their people, and to ensure that they're satisfied and that they're happy. I mean, happy, productive workers are like your biggest asset within any organization. So ultimately it's, on the employers to figure out sort of what are some of the levers, the tactics, the initiatives, the programs that can build more inclusion within a workplace and build that and foster psychological safety. So I think, like, I'll be honest with you, some of those award categories, some of it, like, literally, it's like, did you put a garden on the roof? Yes, we did. Do you hold the, like, some of this stuff is a bit generic, and back in the day it was kind of like, okay, whatever. Now I think there's also a lot of employee activism happening, and employees want to know, and candidates want to know, what are you doing around diversity, equity, and inclusion right now? Like, how are you showing up? What's your vision statement? What's the conversation happening internally at this organization? And that can be quite a driver for a lot of candidates on their way in. And I think a big driver around creating inclusive, psychologically safe workplaces where people are engaged and happy to come to work. So I think there's lots of different specific tactics that everything from when you're going out to look for talent, like, there's a lot of, I think there's a little bit of a movement happening away from, like, employee referral programs, for example, because then you often end up with the same kind of talent, with the same kind of background, and it's like it in the past, I would say it's been like a path of least resistance, and particularly in tight labor markets, it's been a really important lever for employers. But I think what's happening right now is it's like, how do we cast a broader net? How do we not only look at education? I think like Tara, not to at all say that your program, like this program is amazing, and obviously the demand in the industry is significant, but I think that we have to do a better job of figuring out what the competencies of the roles are, and then hiring based on that, rather than, you know, often very specific institutions or specific programs, for example. So that's just sort of one of some initial thoughts. But I think employers are starting to do a better job of tapping into a variety of different sources around how they're recruiting, because they have to as well. Does that answer your question, Tom?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was a broad question, so it's trying to sort things out for us as we go navigate through all this. There's a lot to look for. So yeah, that was fantastic.
Any other questions in the group here? And again, it's true. I was nodding along, Tara, when you were saying, you know, for those, when you get to that, do you have any questions for us, period, and they don't have them, it's a lost opportunity. And I think, you know, I think there's always this perceived power imbalance too between the employers, the industry vets, and, you know, the students or up and comers, and that shyness is there. And I think the shyness isn't necessarily something that anyone has to be, you know, I'm introverted. I don't think people realize that. It's like, at the end of the day, I'm done. I'm like, you know, there you go. Exactly. That's cool. So go in, you know, I'm not trying to wave the introvert flag but I'm just like, it's possible to, you know, be an introvert and still make connections and connect with people at a person to person level. So anyway, I do want to, if anyone else on the call has a question for our guests, other than Tom, you're amazing. You're always there. He's like a way to represent. He's the industry rep in the student cohort here too. But
thank you, Tom. That's
yeah,
awesome.
Thank you.
You know,
we will remember Tom. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You talk about the power imbalance, and this sort of ties back to shifting demographics, where, you know, I'm part of the minority age group wise now in this industry. And so I am so excited that I am learning from people who are much younger than me, who are in the industry, and learning different ways of communication, learning what values really make a difference for them. So it's this real shifting, you know. You're right, most people who are still in decision-making positions and have a lot of power are from one age demographic, and the majority of the crews now and talent are going to be from a different demographic. That's not entirely the case, but a lot of it. And so it's a real change in how we work. And it's exciting because we're looking to you to help us figure it out, because we don't know. We haven't done it. You're the ones who are learning at a much faster pace than we are. We're just trying to keep the business going and keep work happening, you know?
Actually, I'm going to dive on that too, because as I was saying earlier, I'm never on WhatsApp. The students, I was old school in the sense of, you know, Facebook group post, and I'm like, hey, we have a talk, and I'm like, wait, why is it like only like 5 views? Well, they're on WhatsApp, right? So it's and anyway, so I'm trying to meet them where they're at, but every now and then I'll send an email, and it's like, you need to read your email. It's still, if your employers, like if there's recruiters reaching out to you still got to read your email, folks. On the call, please read your email. But anyway, it's true that we're getting to there's some generational learnings and opportunities, and it's we want the best out of our people, and, you know, creating the right kind of environments. And, you know, I think it's great to see we're thinking about how to improve this industry, because I mean, many years ago, the EA spouse letter, you know, I think everyone, you know, the industry was fairly tainted for crunch time, and a lot of studios looking to create a better place for workers beyond free snacks and a ping pong table. And I'm seeing that. So I'm hopeful, because there's so much talent that comes through our doors that are still interested in the creative industry. That's not to say that a lot of our grads are going into the tech scene now, like Amazon and Microsoft. Kathy, I know you got a connection on the inside there too. We got a lot of grads going that route, but there's still those that are just, they diehard want to work in the Cinesites of the world, right? So, or they want to work with Dave at Radical back in the day if they had a time machine. But,
who didn't want to work with Dave at Radical?
I know, right? I get to work with him every day. That's why I recruited Dave. So,
Dennis,
that log cabin.
Dennis, one of the questions you had sent to us that didn't totally come up, and I wanted to bring it up because I thought there was some potentially some good stuff in there, which was thinking about equity, diversity, and inclusion, and thinking about coming in as new talent, and what's your part in that? How do you contribute as a citizen of the company or studio you're working with? And I would say, like, first of all, if you're a person of privilege, recognize that. Let's start there. And we all have, we all need to learn in all kinds of directions. And so that makes a big difference. I think people who try to learn do stand out in organizations. Actively try and create safer spaces, and that means that you speak up if you see something. It also means you shut up when your voice doesn't need to be heard. And you try and you make mistakes and you apologize, and then you be respectfully curious. Like, I think these are all things that we can, not just as employees and employers, but everybody, try and do more of.
Yeah, and you know, again, I'm going to tip my cap to both of you, because I saw an interview that you did earlier that was on LinkedIn, and it inspired me to change my pronouns on LinkedIn, which was the first place that I did it. It's in my email signature now, but I'm just like, you know, again, old dog, new tricks, I guess, in the sense, but I'm trying, you know, and I'm just inspired by that, because it's you know, we have this mantra, like, make the world a better place, that's not necessarily in our, you know, public branding, but that's kind of, you know, what's been driving us at our workplace. And as I was saying, like, so on the WhatsApp side, I'm gonna try to change my background on the fly here. I don't know if it'll work or not, but oh, there we go. Yeah, so I saw these were students posting on the WhatsApp thing about it, and I was just excited to see it, because it was a random, their own channel, and I was just like, you're commenting on a flag that we put up on the building, and there's all these, you know, these students, these super shy students, you know, going, you know, there you go. Yeah, just, anyway, this is just say that I'm like, people like yourselves that are making the world a better place, you know, make what I do and what, you know, what all these students are learning about, you know, super meaningful. And I'm appreciative of your time. I don't know why we didn't have more questions, other than maybe the students are just feeling the heat.
I think Tom might have one more, though.
Yeah, I have a quick one for Tara with Cinesite. And for the artists that are in this program, and storytellers, do you encourage kind of in-house, like your own employees? Do they ever get a chance to reveal their own artwork and stories, and do you encourage that or foster that at all?
Yeah, we do. Cinesite does have an internal pitch program for crew. It's pretty structured, because we want it to be a meaningful program that could actually lead to something. We actually had a couple from Cinesite Vancouver who just, meaning a couple of people, artists, pitch something that we're waiting to hear if it's going to go somewhere. So yes, sometimes it's more active than others. You know, when you're in the heat of a production, people's overall creativity tends to drop, because all they're doing is keeping their eyes on the prize. But ideally, yes, we like to foster that as much as we can, and provide other environments where people can showcase their creativity. It may not be like a big company thing all the time, but what we really try and do is encourage the employees and the talent to build their own communities. Don't wait for the employer to set it up, because we can't set it up for everybody. We know that everybody's got unique interests. So encourage people to step forward and make those suggestions themselves. Kathy, what you got to say?
Yeah, I was going to share, like, so at Clay Entertainment, just as an example, it's quite interesting the way the studio is run. Like, I've worked in studios where we did, like, you know, sort of like Freedom Fridays, where people would work on their own stuff, and you know, there was some autonomy to sort of try out and, you know, pitch back, and like there was some cool interplays, and I think some of that definitely does still happen. I think at Clay, for example, it's very much like when we go to start a new project, it's pretty much like you're running your own small operation. I've never really quite seen anything like it. It's like, okay, just like, here's a ton of rope, go have some fun, bring something back, and then like we'll keep going if it's working, right? So it's kind of astonishing that there's like those kinds of opportunities, I think, that still are out there, as well as the actual, like, okay, yes, you know, we're the products that we are maintaining and our community around those products are also extremely, obviously, important revenue sources, and and you know, that's still happening. But I think there's some cool things still out and happening in the sector around that.
Is Jamie Cheng still at the helm there? Is that?
Yeah, and we were recently acquired by Tencent.
Yeah, I'd heard that news, but it also draws back to Nexon Studios, which Tara was at when I was doing PR at Edelman, and that was my main client actually, alongside Blue Castle Games and Slant 6. But anyway, degrees of connection. Kevin Bacon. We're close to 7 o'clock. With that, I think
they have to check out Tara's podcast. It's ridiculous, and it's just filled with awesomeness.
This is true. So if that link can come my way, I will share it broadly. That would be amazing. So we can do that as an email after the fact. But as well, thank you again so much, both of you. Thanks to all for attending tonight. Your shyness is seen. Not completely understood, but I'm trying to adjust my perspective. Larry's not shy. He's back. He's saying good night here as well. There's Josh. Hey, Josh. Good to see you. And I'm seeing some virtual hands. But anyway, thank you again.
You're welcome.
You know, our program wouldn't be what it is if we didn't have people like yourselves giving back in this way. So I do thank you.
It was really fun. Thanks.
Yeah, it's always so great it's so nice, like a little baby reunion. It's so nice.
I know. Yeah, it's few and far between, but when we do get to see each other, it's great. So yeah, thanks again.
The not too distant future, right?
Yeah, we will. I owe many people many beers, I think. So I have to have, we're gonna have some kind of major celebration on site. So anyway, enjoy your evenings. Say hi to significant others for me too, and you know, and all things. So it's been great. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Bye.